Welcome to my presentation on the Ramesseum Magical Papyri collection by Paris, Bermudas. The Ramesseum Papyri are a collection of 24 papyri scrolls with text considered to be magical in the funerary context dating from the Middle Kingdom within the 12th and 13th dynasties, specifically 1863 to 1650 BCE. The papyri and associated objects were found in 1895 by Flinders Petrie and James Quibble in a shaft tomb beneath the temple of Ramses II in Thebes. Unfortunately, today the tomb itself is lost beneath both the temple of Ramses II and the necropolis complex from the 22nd dynasty, even after attempts were made in 2016 to locate it. Without the tomb, contemporary scholars must work from the notes of the original archaeologists, the papyri, and the objects found in the tomb. Until recently, the papyri themselves were dated using the wall paintings from a priest's tomb above where the papyri were found. A shaft was cut straight down into a corridor between two burial chambers, which were most likely one chamber later divided. Gianluca Miniacci of Pisa University suggests that the tomb of the papyri was sacked by the builders of the Temple of Ramses II, while the other two burials were robbed later. Both disturbances, however, missed, forgot about, or left the box of papyri. Unfortunately, there is no evidence linking the box to the priest's tomb. Though it's tempting, given the spiritual nature of the text, it will be made clear that the content was common burial literature. The original box is now lost. It measured 18 by 12 by 12 inches, was covered in white plaster, suggesting a symbolic transformation to the funerary context, while a crude jackal associated with the Master of Secrets was painted on the lid. Considered to be included in the box, along with the papyri, are 16 reed pens, 2 clappers, 4 birth tusks, a herder carrying a calf, a segmented cuboid rod, a small jade pillar, and a burnisher, all in ivory. In faience, objects in the form of 2 baboons, a simian, a hedgehog, a truncated female figure, a melon, a lotus cup, and a lion amulet. In wood, there is a lion-faced or masked woman with snakes in her hand and a painted paddle doll. In limestone, 2 truncated female figures and a rearing cobra in copper alloy. A handful of beads in different stones and shapes are now misplaced. Scholars name this collection the Ramesseum Magical Papyri because of the content that includes spells and formulae for health and protection against evil spirits, diseases, and prescriptions regarding childbirth to ointments for body relaxation. There are literary texts containing mythical episodes, some associated with death or celebration. Most surprisingly are the papyri whose recto or verso contain private accounts, grain records, and even old military dispatches. This brings up the question of the provenance of each papyri, where it came from, its date, its relationship to the other papyri, and what they can tell us about the owner. I have combined my own research with that compiled by Miniacci in a graph in order to better analyze the collection as a whole and all the mysterious elements. I have arranged the papyri in order by date. Those without enough evidence to date are at the bottom. The first two papyri are dated by their recto, which are the military dispatch documents. Though they involve different forts in Nubia, now northern Sudan, and are both dated to the 3rd year of the reign of Amenemhet III in 1863 BCE. The other narrow date is that of Papyrus A, whose verso contains the tale of Sinu, the original of which is dated to 1800 BCE. All other dates found here have been determined by paleography, whereas the missing dates are mostly due to the poor and fragmentary nature of the examples. In fact, most of our knowledge of the contents of these texts is from Gardner's translations and analysis. Sadly, today the papyri continue to decay due to the chemicals with which they are affixed to their framing supports. I have marked the text pertaining to magic in orange, and you will see that a magical text is found on one or both sides of a papyrus, where others have private accounts or blank sides. These differences bring up the question of the use of these papyri before their placement in the tomb. Because of the significant medical and practical nature of the text that do not explicitly discuss or relate to death, one would assume they were also used in life. The private accounts certainly were used in life, as were some of the objects that clearly show use. According to Egyptian religion and burial traditions, the concept of birth was dangerous and important, because a person was born once into the world and secondly into the afterlife. In the Ramesseum Papyri collection, the document P4 deals specifically with issues and rituals related to pregnancy and birth. Stephen Quirk says the battle for a safe birth was an anxiety that spanned all classes. Once a woman gave birth, it was a vulnerable time for the woman's health, but also her susceptibility to contaminating evil spirits. The birth tusks functioned as a magic wand that would have been held during ritual incantations. These incised tusks are found in tombs throughout the Middle Kingdom. However, no parallel tomb examples have 4 tusks. Generally, one tusk correlates to one person and does not denote gender. Some scholars want to connect this inconsistency with proof that the owner of these tusks and this tomb was either a magician, a priest, a medical practitioner, a healer, a shaman, or even a storyteller in order to explain the number of tusks and, of course, the papyri content. However, Egyptian tombs very rarely are associated with a person's occupation in life. It did not define them, contrary to today. Here I identify 13 papyri that demonstrate the 9 individual hands of a scribe. I have denoted 3 groupings of documents in the first column in various shades of pink that share the same hand. I believe this could indicate the ownership of each grouping by a different individual at one point. I do not believe that any of the hands necessarily belong to that of the owner, as a scribe could have easily been commissioned, but instead proves that later acquisition of these texts by the owner of the tomb. Some scholars suggest that these nuances could prove the owner's concerns before their death. My interpretation of this hypothesis is that if the papyri with magical texts on the recto and a blank verso, or writing on both sides, were proven to be the most recent, it might suggest the owner's age and impending death, whereas those containing private accounts on the verso could suggest routine activity and a need for spare writing support. Despite this, some or all of the papyri could have been collected post-mortem for the deceased, specifically for their burial. Quirk notes that the Chester Beatty Papyri collection suggests the families kept and collected papyri over generations. In the Ramesseum collection, P3 refers to "my house" in the text, which supports the notion of private collections opposed to a library archive. Again, we cannot definitively identify the hand of the ultimate owner or when the papyri came into their possession, which leaves us with more questions than answers. Though the majority of the objects from the tomb are small in size, most scholars agree that they are of good quality material and craftsmanship. The quality of the objects and the quantity of papyri could point to the wealth of the tomb owner and probability that they had the means to acquire these particular texts and objects for the purpose of burial. The objects are standard of what you would find in a Middle Kingdom tomb of someone of the educated elite class, and did not directly correlate to magical uses, aside from the papyri, birth tusks, and cuboid rod. Unusual nonetheless are the lion-faced or masked female figure, the copper snake wand, and the jade pillar. We have no comparable examples for this type of leonine figure with snakes, possibly wands, in her hands, which could relate to the ritual practice. Perhaps uncoincidentally, the snake was now lost, not dissimilar to the snake wands found in the hands of the leonine female. The ivory jade pillar is not usually found in a funerary context, but refers to protection and strength. Unfortunately, in the end, we still have many questions. When were these papyri collected, and did any belong to their family? Could the apparent wealth explain the quantity of papyri and the birth tusks? Can the content of the papyri point towards a sudden demise of the owner? Sadly, we may never know the answer to these questions, but the importance of these papyri to the understanding of Egyptian burial and ritual practices in the Middle Kingdom is undeniable. Thank you.